What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto husband of Hera? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. I am known as Chaos, of course. Once upon a time I was also known as the creator or the first being. I once had millions of followers all around my first project called Earth, and now, I'm left with nothing, and the only being I can blame for all this is me. I had thought they all loved me much like everything else did at the time. But my arrogance blinded me. I never thought they would do what they did. I created the primordials, the parents of the Titans. I thought that when Kronos had destroyed Uranus things would get better for everyone. I guess that old saying these mortals made holds truth. Never say things can't get any worse because it always can. I tempted fate and got bitch slapped, showing that Kronos was honestly worse than Uranus. I hate to say it, but the world might have been better with him controlling it. But once again history repeated itself as the world escaped destruction when little baby Zeus did what Kronos did to Uranus. Thanks to Rhea, out of all the Titans she was my favorite, always so kind, so nurturing. In the minds of everyone else everything was okay once Zeus and the Olympians took control. Ha 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 ha. Sorry, but that couldn't be any farther than the truth. People failed to realize that Zeus is worse than his father. I'm serious, his ego is bigger than Mount Olympus itself. Anyways, not to sound like the world revolves around me, but it was then I realized I was old. I mean, I look damn fine for a woman who's older than the world, but still I'm old, and if not for Hestia, Hera and Artemis I'm practically forgotten. And for those who know what happens to the forgotten in this type of world, we perish. To me that was worse than today's idea of a mercy killing. At least they go peacefully. For us it's a sure kill death sign, and mine practically read, "Bye bye chaos, it was nice knowing ya." With me realizing this on my throne in an empty study with my books of literature filled with all forms of knowledge of the world over since the beginning. I sit there with struck stupid realization. And the more I realized it, the more things began to clarify for me. I need an heir, and possibly a king, one who would truly love me. One with all my power, which is a lot. I mean, all my children and grandchildren had to get it from someone, damn it. But for that I would need to have one through childbirth. I honestly don't need a reason. I mean, look how Uranus and Gaia turned out, and they came looking like teenagers. This child would need to start out a baby, a child I could raise and actually take the time out to care for and nurture as they grow. But I needed a world to put him in, a world where I could raise and care for him. I created a world that was filled with shinobi or ninja. I first created the Jubi, my companion, so at least I don't get bored from being alone. But that damned priest slid her into 9, resulting in the Biju or the 9-tailed beast. But nobody knew of the 10th, that part stayed with me. With no memories of what happened or who he was, he became Minato Namikaze, a war orphan, and later the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. He disappeared from my life only for me to find him in the Leaf Village. I soon made my appearance, known as the Uzumaki heiress and the Red Death Kushina Uzumaki. As I grew with him I began to fall in love, which resulted in my pregnancy with my first natural-born boy and my future heir and king, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. I remember the first moment I held him, and it's been 17 years since when that masked bastard took my little boy from me to rip out the Kyuubi. I could have done something, but from giving birth and having that overgrown fox pelt being ripped out of me, my mortal body wouldn't last. Minato had defeated him, but it was a strategic retreat at best. Minato sealed the 9 tails inside my son as he died. I had to act fast, so I created duplicates of everything I had. Me and my clones learn, which thanks to the millions of clones running around gathered information. Jutsu, taijutsu, kenjutsu, summoning contracts well too really. Even with the power he would get from Minato, with him having his original power and lessons on how to use them. After all, I gave Minato the abilities in the first place and collected it all and placed it in a seal in his arm once his blood awakened. I had to leave my little whirlpool to suffer at the hands of those fuckers after Minato gave his life to protect them, and he had one simple request: to see our son be seen as a hero. I would have been happy if he was treated at least like a normal person. But instead they treated an innocent child like he was a monster and made it a sport to hunt him down like an animal. If I could, I would just raise that pathetic village till it was nothing more than a pile of ash. That punk-ass law Zeus made be damned. But of course I'm also forced to follow those damned laws, especially since Minato was reduced to a half-deity, thus making a demi-deity. Damn laws. Now here I am sitting in my chambers watching Earth as the world is starting to go to shit again. Seems someone stole my great-grandson's toy and he's having one massive hissy fit. Why Hestia doesn't take the command is beyond me, especially since she is the oldest and by law should rule. She's more level-headed her and Hera. At least a woman isn't arrogant like Zeus. I can say I never was a fan of him. He's a womanizer and a man whore, although that sweet girl Talia. The only demigod born from him is one I respect. She had character and a never say die attitude. I'm just hoping the girls will treat him well, at least Hestia will. Artemis is a question mark. She would be cautious with him thanks to that bastard Orion, but I hope she would at least give him a fair chance. Her girls won't be so simple. They've been hurt so severely they hate the mere sight of men. But from what Hestia tells me from watching the flames he makes, she can tell even after all the things he's gone through he's still a respectable young man and a gentleman. I wonder how he's doing now. Oh, I bet he's become such a handsome young man now. What? The chamber echoed as a tall 5'11" woman sat on her throne wearing black low-rise jeans with a blood-red shirt with long crimson-red hair with black streaks blending in, framing her pale aristocratic heart-shaped face as her royal purple eyes glowed with a red undertone. Why yes, chaos. You see, while watching Naruto I decided to take a peek into the village when I heard the Hokage and the ninja in Konoha planning to have him killed. They planned this for when he returns to Konoha when he's at his weakest, from having him do a suicide mission since he contains your old companion Jubi. A young 8-year-old girl said, sitting near a fire. She had mousy brown hair and warm eyes that resembled fire, wearing a simple brown dress. I see. Thank you, Hestia. What do you know of his location and his health? Is he well, Artemis? She asked as a full-grown woman with auburn hair and silver-yellow eyes, wearing a pair of black cargo shorts with silver lining with a gray shirt with a black wolf on the side with 2 hunting knives attached at the waist with a silver bow on her back, was next to her. Some wild wolves told me he's suffered some serious injury and has already made it to Konoha and is with his godmother being treated for those injuries, but from what some of the local dogs tell me the entirety of Konoha's ninja are seen heading for him. Even the Hokage Jiraiya himself is heading to the hospital. And seeing as his surrogate sister Shizune and fiancés Hinata and Tsunade are staying hidden in his room, this isn't the first time someone's attempted to take his life. She explained, getting a growl as she stood up, grabbing a large scroll and a bundle while creating a katana with a U-shaped guard and a red tassel. Come on, both of you, some mortals have overstepped their boundaries and they're going to know the wrath of a goddess, she said, flashing as they all stepped through a portal she created, as both Hestia and Artemis were intending to do their best to stay out of an enraged mother's path. Outside the hospital. Come on people, the demon's weak now. We can finish what Sensei started and rid the village of this demon's taint. A man wearing a standard Junin uniform, wearing his headband over his eye with spiky gray hair, announced as they were about to storm the hospital when a wall of ice formed in front of the door. What? Another man wearing a kabuki outfit said, with his spiky white hair done in a long ponytail, said, alarmed as they looked around when a large fireball came flying from a black space that started to form in front of the door. Come out, coward, or stay out of our way. A demon needs to be dealt with, a less than brave ninja said before he got bisected by a gold chain as a woman came walking out with crimson red hair with black streaks with royal purple eyes came. You worms have a lot of nerve. I created your pitiful world, gave you pathetic monkeys the use of chakra, and what do I see? You tried to kill the hero who saved your miserable existences, she growled as she stood in front of the frozen door. Who the hell do you think you are, woman? There's a demon in there that needs to be dealt with, the gray-haired man said, only to get pushed by an invisible force. Oh, if it isn't Minato-kun's poor excuse of a student. I wonder what he would say if he saw his student trying to kill his and my son, she said with a condescending smirk as she gripped the wrist of the long white-haired man as a swirling ball was in his palm. Who are you? He said, getting a chuckle as she said. Of course it has been a while, and if you don't see a pair of then you would never be able to remember, so let me fill in the blanks. You were helping Minato-kun and I pick out a name for our soon-to-be-born son, she said, drawing a katana with a U-shaped guard. Kei Kushina-chan, I. He started before he had the sheath of the sword slammed into his face, launching him back. Don't address me as if you're familiar with me, you pathetic human, she said, growling as her hair split into 9 tails. Kakashi-sensei, who is that woman? A pink-haired girl asked, eyeing her warily. That's Minato-sensei's wife and the demon's mother, the only woman in the elemental nations that could easily win against Madara, Orochimaru and the 7 swordsmen on her own. Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, princess of the Whirlpool Nation, Kakashi said with dread as many of the Leaf Ninja gasped when a woman with black wavy hair, A man with his headband acting as a bandana and a woman with purple hair came running to her. Kushina-sensei, they said before getting blasted with killer intent. Yugao, Kurenai, Hayate, I can't say I'm too happy to see you three amongst the ilk, she said as she slowly started to change till she was now wearing all black jeans with a black high-collared shirt that kept her mouth hidden while her eyes were practically alit with rage, making them flinch back. Kushina, what did you mean earlier? Jiraiya said, standing up as he stood back with the others as a cruel chuckle escaped her lips. Well, you see, you pitiful human, I'm not really human, she started when the same pink-haired annoyance shouted in her face. Obviously you had to use your demonic powers to force Yondaime-sama to breed with you, she shouted before getting a hard blow to the stomach, making her fly to the Hokage monument, embedding her into the newest edition of the wall, being Jiraiya's face, causing it to collapse. Now if the howler monkey is out of the picture, I can finish my explanation while some friends of mine retrieves my son and his true friends, she said as steam came from her extended foot, making a purple-haired woman wearing a tan trench coat whistle before standing in front of Kushina with stars in her eyes. How did you do that? And why do you claim to be Naruto-kun's mom? He took me to her gravesite before. If you're her, then how the hell are you so fucking young? She asked, getting a raised hand. If you'll let me explain, I can tell you, she said, causing the woman to chuckle lightly while scratching the back of her head. Now, as I was saying, I'm no simple mortal, nor am I a demon. I am a goddess, to be more precise, the goddess of all things, even the world you all inhabit, and many more much like this, while this is one is younger than its sister planets by a few millennia. In my desire to create an heir to take over after me, I created this world while it was young and brought my companion you all call the Jubi so she could keep me from being bored, while I created all those special bloodlines you pride yourselves over, with me being the original bearer of them all. She started, making the group gathered eyes to widen. Yes, I know I created the evil entity you all fought not too recently. You see, she wasn't evil, she and I were sparing when that blasted Otsutsuki separated her into the nine-tailed beast to act as guardians for these nations, assuming she was trying to kill me. What history failed to inform you all was he didn't just make 9 beings from her, I snatched the 10th part as it drifted from me until it landed here some generations later, she said, getting wide eyes. You see, the 10th portion of my old companion didn't have any memory, nor was it able to use the vast power it had, with it being the strongest fraction of the Jubi. He came here as a war orphan who later grew to help win the Third War, she said with a grin, seeing the gears starting to mesh in their heads. Wait a minute, Jiraiya said as Kushina ignored him as she looked up at the window where Naruto's room was. Yes, even though he didn't have the memories or the power, he still had Shinju's kindness and willpower. He had the most peculiar name he made up for himself. What was it? Oh yes, Minato Namikaze. I won't deny I found the time he and I spent together enjoyable, but with how long Shinju and I've spent together, I just couldn't form that romantic link. Although it didn't stop me from giving birth to my first and only son through traditional birth, she said with a fond smile before the entire village shook from her killer intent. And I gave you ignorant mortals one simple fucking request. Do you or Jiraiya remember what it was, Kakashi? She roared, making the two shake. TTTT to P protect Naruto for you? He said rhetorically, getting a glare. Yes, to protect my son. You see, I saw everything he's experienced as a child through a fragment of my soul that I placed in there, and with the assistance of his 2 future wives. It appears the only ones who did what I had asked was Sarutobi, Guy and Tsunade when Naruto found her on a mission. And why was that, Toad Sage? She demanded as the sage shrunk under her glare. He didn't say anything as he looked away, making her snort. Thought so, you pathetic human. Be happy my son has more tolerance for you humans than I do, because if he didn't, since he absorbed his father and with both of our blood, he could have whipped you out of existence at the slightest annoyance. But don't worry, since you're so eager to rid yourselves of my son, I'll take him off your hands, she said as both Hestia and Artemis came out of the window with Naruto draped over Artemis's shoulder, going into the portal with Tsunade, Shizune and Hinata following behind them, ignoring the cries for them to return their weapon. Turning to walk away, she felt a hand grip her shoulder, causing her to see a teary-eyed Anko. Where are you taking my Naruto-kun? Her eyes softened as she whipped a tear, saying softly, You love him, don't you, sweetie? She nodded with her head down. He's the only person in this village who doesn't treat me like a traitor for being the student of one or a whore. He's the only one, with the others included, that helped me keep my sanity. Please let me come with you. She nodded as they walked into the portal with Kushina saying as the portal began to close, "Oh, and Jiraiya, on my little visit here I made a stop to all the places my son saved and informed your daimyo about this. So do expect them to have some words for all of you Chow." They all tried to catch her but an invisible force pushed them back as the portal closed completely, making everyone turn to Jiraiya and Kakashi as Neji said, "Hokage-sama, I think it's time you explained what's going on and how you know that woman and what connection she had to Gai-sensei, Sandaime-sama and Uzumaki." The two groaned as the rest of the ninja nodded as they were all trying to come up with some excuse to avoid the scandal that was coming. Between realms. Kushina, how? Tsunade asked, making both Hinata and Shizune to snap their heads toward her while the three goddesses and Anko sat quietly. She sighed, "Well, you see, Hestia and Artemis here are celestial goddesses. To be honest, Kushina was never human, neither was Minato. I am the being who created everything on your world and its sister worlds along with your abilities." But Tsunade started when they heard the sound of flesh connecting with flesh when they saw Hinata stand over Kushina, who was now on the floor with a red handprint, as they all stare wide-eyed at a Byakugan enhanced glare as she shook from the look slightly. "So you just up and left him alone? I heard everything you said outside the hospital and you just up and left him alone while pretending to die? Where the fuck were you when he needed you? Do you know how much he longed for his mother?" She roared, causing the kunoichi and goddesses to go wide-eyed. The kunoichi because they've never heard her cuss with such volume before, and the goddesses because they saw the image of a god and goddess appear behind her as they raised an eyebrow, and the fact a mortal had the nerve to strike a goddess. Getting up, she said while healing her bruised cheek, "You get that one since I deserved it. Especially since I can't really call myself his mom. But you see, there is a reason why I or any of the gods or goddesses where we're from we aren't allowed to raise our children. You, Tsunade, Anko, Shizune included." They all raised an eyebrow, causing the collective goddesses to sigh while Kushina combed her hand through her son's hair, which was slowly turning red with gold streaks. She said, "Girls, haven't you ever wondered where either your mom or dad were? Or why you had a hard time with your language, or why you sometimes have a hard time sitting still?" They all thought it over and realized they did have a hard time at some point with those things as they nodded while watching Naruto slowly change as his skin tone lightened as she slipped on a black fingerless arm warmer. "Yes, you see, my great-grandchildren learned of this world and had children here, each of which is what you are the result of from them and immortal. And to tell you who your godly parents or grandparents would be illegal until you go to a special camp until they claim you as their offspring," she explained as she forced her energy into him, causing him to get younger. "But why are you making him younger? And also, why tell us this?" Anko asked, feeling sleep starting to claim her as it already claimed the others. "You see, my brother had lost his weapon and is about to start a war which would cause a major backlash. He thinks it's Poseidon's son Percy who stole it, even though he knows nothing of his heritage, so I'm sending you all to help him because we feel there's something more serious going on. So we're sending you to New York to attend his school," Hestia said, getting a nod. Handing her the large scroll and parcel, Kushina said, "We've already got lodging dealt with where you five are living and are already enrolled. We also have all your necessities in place so you won't need to pay for anything, and also make sure you don't tell him about my real identity. I want to tell him when the time is right." She nodded as she slowly fell asleep as they all put them on Naruto's bed unconscious as they faded into the portal as she gently kissed her son on his forehead, whispering softly as she placed a letter on the parcel that rested on the nightstand. "See you soon, my king," after placing a gash across their headbands. The next morning, Naruto groaned, trying to sit up when he felt a familiar pressure on his chest to see Hinata, Tsunade and Anko sleeping on him while he smelled his surrogate sister's cooking, causing him to create a clone to replace himself with as he got up before falling. He thought, "What the hell? I know I've suffered some serious wounds, but I can't have vertigo. I recover from that too quickly, especially in a single night." Standing, he saw a full body mirror as he walked forward, noticing several things. 1. He wasn't in his room at his dad's complex. 2. He and most likely the girls had gotten shorter or younger, and 3. His features changed. His once spiky hair had now reached past his neck as it was predominantly red with gold streaks as it slightly came over his eyes while retaining its spiky quality, as he now had aristocratic features with a narrow face as he held feminine qualities in his face and body, making him look like a pretty boy. His skin had lightened rather dramatically to the point he barely had any tone while maintaining his muscle, giving him the qualities of a swimmer or runner. Lifting the bangs over his eyes, he could see they were now heterochromatic on black sclera, the left eye being a deep royal purple with the right being a deep red like a fine Chardonnay. Feeling a burning sensation, he focused his chakra into them as they changed until he gained silver rings in his eyes with several red tomo spread around the rings before he changed them back while using a genjutsu to hide the sclera, making them appear to be normal. Looking closer at himself, he realized he had indeed gotten younger as he had returned to his 12-year-old self except for his hair and eyes. Hearing a series of moans, he saw the girls getting up as he said, "Hey Himes, it seems we're in a totally new place and Shizune made breakfast." They nodded as they all walked into the kitchen, with Shizune also reverted to a 13-year-old standing at the dining room counter with several plates of pancakes, sausages and eggs with another plate of toast and a large pitcher of juice. Sipping a cup of coffee, she said, "Hey everyone, it seems things are getting pretty odd, huh?" They nodded as Shizune and the others told him of what happened when they left the village, as he was surprised and shocked to hear not only was the 10 tails a portion of his father and him being the sibling of the other tailed beasts, but his mother was actually a goddess. Granted, he was pissed originally as he had believed his mom was dead this entire time, but learned she and the rest of her children were incapable of directly meeting their children until they've been claimed as their children calmed him down. "Oh Naruto-kun, this was addressed to you," Shizune said, handing him the letter as he read aloud. "Dear Naruto, I'm truly sorry for leaving you alone to such a life for so long. When I had you, I had planned for the mortals I trusted to look after you until it was time for me to get you. It was until I gained the soul fragment I left in you to learn your life was less than pleasant, as everyone betrayed mine and Minato's trust. This is the first reason why I brought you to where you and the girls are. Naruto-kun, the thing I have to tell you is there is a serious problem in the world I left you and your girls in, and they're going to need as much help as possible to survive if what I believe to be happening is true. I know you have a lot of questions in store and I'm more than willing to answer them when we get the chance to meet face to face, but until then I placed you in New York City, and when I get the chance we will finally get to talk like we did before. In New York there is where you will attend a school called Yancy Academy with the girls, as well as meet one of your cousins. I guess you could address him. His name is Perseus Jackson and he's going to be the focal point behind all of this. In this note I've included several books to learn this world's language known as English to mix in with society, as well as clothing to wear. History textbooks to learn of the world and what has happened since its existence, and many other things to learn in this world. And in the closets of all the bedrooms there are clothes for all of you to wear. Inside I also left my collection of techniques for all of you from the time in the elemental nations, from jutsu to taijutsu and everything in between, and techniques only available to you and the girls, since I know you either marked them as your mates or family. And for you my son, I've left you and the girls some weapons that will be helpful against what you're all going to be facing, but it would be best if you brushed up on your Greek history, believe me it will save you. I must be going, Soichi. Also be kind to the moon and flames, for they hold an important connection to you. P.S. Tell Hinata she has a hell of a backhand, it still hurts. And I've got you all applied to Yancy, so you are to head to this position at 8 a.m. sharp on Monday morning in 2 weeks, since that's the end of Thanksgiving. And note that your cousins all have a chakra signature just underused, so they will stand out to you all like a beacon. On a side note, you may have noticed the glove on your hand. With how much power you have from being my child and Minato, or more so Shinju, who is the most powerful component of the 10 tails, making you a being that already stands far above many of my offspring in terms of power and strength. That glove is a limiter that puts you just above my great-grandchildren. But if you remove it you will gain all your power back, but you will have a time limit. If it isn't put back on in time, your body will be forced to fully transform into what you should have been all this time. So be careful. I love you Naruto, I really do, and we'll see you soon. With love, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. They all watched as he bowed his head before a grin started to form as he said, "Well girls, it seems we've got a new mission. One that is very important, so I guess we're going to have to prepare." They nodded while smiling, seeing him happy as he undid the various seals when the entire floor was covered in textbooks and scrolls, making him and Enko scream in despair as their eyes widened at the sight of the near countless amount of books. The others could only deadpan, seeing the two sit in a corner with a depressed aura around them as they huddled in a corner, causing them to sigh before they were given a haymaker to the back of the head from Tsunade, causing them to nurse their bruises. Alright, that's enough of that, thank you. Or did you both forget we have the shadow clones? She suggested, getting an "Oh, that's right" from the two, making her groan, while Hinata and Shizune giggled. Wait, if that's the case, why didn't you use them during your time as Hokage? Naruto asked, causing her to put her head down. She whined, it seems to be that accursed Hokage's hat. It keeps us from making coherent thoughts like using the shadow clone. They nodded as they all formed clones, having them do the reading and studying. They all started practicing the hand signs for the jutsu while familiarizing themselves with the weapons. His mom specifically left him a pair of hunting knives that were an onyx black color and composition bow, and a special long onyx black katana with 3 spiked protrusions with a long chain, as the hilt was black with a red diamond pattern that he learned was called Tensa Zanjetsu. Yes, I know I use Tensa Zanjetsu a lot, but that, along with Zanjetsu and many other Zanpakuto, are my favorite blades in the Bleach series. And lastly, twin 13mm anti-freak combat pistols with a chakra alloy made hollow point round made from some sort of bronze casing, just like his Red Queen, that could also fire rounds from compressed chakra rounds. Hinata had received a twin long swords and a twin hunting knives and a Colt M1911.454 Kasul Auto that acted just like Naruto's. Tsunade got a pair of long hunting knives that could have been mistaken for a pair of swords and a Desert Eagle revolver. Shizune had received twin swords and a bow and arrow, while Anko picked a Nodashi with twin Desert Eagles. They all sealed them away while learning that their weapons were keyed onto them, so if they were lost they would return to the seals they placed on them, which they were thankful for, and also learned that for those who had arrows had a large, nearly infinite supply, but it would take some time to reload on arrows, so even though they had literally tons upon tons of arrows, they couldn't fire them with caution thrown to the winds. Getting up, Naruto said, "Welp, since our clones are doing some studying, I'm going to do some recon and learn about this place. Anyone care to join me?" They nodded as they all went out of their home. As they walked out the house after they changed their attire, Naruto chose a pair of black denim jeans with 2 red studded belts hanging on his waist, with 2 black Converse shoes with a black turtleneck, with his green gem necklace resting around his neck, with a gray furred hoodie, with his hair done in a ponytail done by Anko, who decided to give him a trim as she braided the ponytail. Hinata wore a pair of blue jeans with a pair of boots and red blouse under a thick flannel jacket. Anko chose some hip-hugging jeans complete with a snakeskin belt with gray sneakers and a tight sweater with her trench coat on. Shizune wore the most unsurprising. She had on a large conservative sweater with a wide neck with a long scarf wrapped around her neck, and a pair of hip-hugging jeans and boots with a warm purple-black jacket. And lastly, Tsunade wore a green wide-neck turtleneck that hugged her now redeveloping curves, with a pair of black low-rise jeans and sneakers with a fleece jacket. I have to admit, this place is by far more advanced in terms of technology than in the nation's Naruto said as they looked around, seeing the large change in scenery from the mildly imposing buildings to the mechanized transportation. I would agree, although the people here seem rather rude and unsavory, Shizune said, looking at all the sketchy people and groups looking at them. As they made their way around New York, they came across this sweet shop that was written in some fancy script that made it difficult to read, as the words began to jumble before they realized it was called Sweet on America. As they walked in, when their senses were assaulted with the strong scent of sweets and other goods, when a woman with brown hair and warm blue eyes, as she wore a red, white and blue apron with her hair done in a bun, with a black shirt and blue jeans. "Welcome to Sweet on America, what can I do for you all?" she asked, looking at them all, when Naruto jolted slightly, saying, "Yes, we're new to New York, so we were taking a look around. Get familiar with things around here since it's so big," he said kindly with his hand extended, which she took shaking. "Oh, well, let me welcome you to New York. I'm Sally Jackson. Are you all starting Yancey this winter?" she asked, getting a nod from them all. "It's nice to meet you as well, and yes, we're joining after break. I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," he said with a grin. "I'm Anko Mitarashi, nice to meet ya," she said boisterously, getting a chuckle from the woman. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Jackson. I'm Hinata Hyuga," she said, shaking her hand. "It's nice to meet you, ma'am. I'm Tsunade Senju," she said with her usual grin, while her former student sent her a deadpan expression before shaking her head. "And I'm Shizune Kato. Thank you for letting us into your establishment, Miss Jackson," she said politely before she waved it off. "Oh, there's no need to be so polite. Is there anything you want?" she asked, making them all look around the shop before finding what they wanted. Naruto got a few bags of fireballs and other spicy candies with some gums and hard candies. Tsunade got some root beer barrels and a few bags of suckers and taffy. Hinata got some of everything ranging from chocolate to gum in several bags. Shizune did the same with the bags being slightly more taffy-oriented, while Anko got what Naruto did and balanced them between spicy candies and goods with the sour. Ringing them all up, Sally said, and that will total to $23.50. Checking their pockets, Naruto felt something emerge when he pulled a couple 20s, counting for a little under 100 as he gave her $25, getting $1.50 in change which they pocketed while telling them to come again, which they nodded with a smile. Walking out, Naruto said after popping in a fireball, "She seems nice." Agreeing, they continued to walk around the town before seeing the academy, seeing it was more of a dormitory, as they also saw there was a football field, track field and others in the back of the school, coming to the conclusion that the school had various teams before they made their way back to their home. On the roof of their home. "I got to admit, this world is a whole different monster than what we've dealt with in the elemental nations," Anko said, popping some gum into her mouth as they all nodded, enjoying their large stash of sweets. "Yeah, but I got to ask, Naruto-kun, where did you get the money?" Tsunade asked as they all turned to him, making him pull out a note as it read, "Here you all go. Inside Naruto-kun's pocket was money for whatever you were going to do when you got there. I've also included a credit cards for each of you that has no limit in funds. Just don't spend it haphazardly to avoid the suspicion of why a couple of 12/13-year-olds have credit cards that could buy the world if they wanted. The pin for each of them are the day and month of your birthday, so it should be pretty easy to remember," as they all grabbed a card as Tsunade had dollar signs in her eyes, making them groan before Naruto's smirk. "You know, Suheim, they don't allow minors to gamble until they're 18, right?" he said with a grin, making her gain a mortified expression before Shizune gained a sadistic glint. "And you have to be 21 to drink unless we're given the privilege to do so," she said, causing her to faint before they all laughed before noticing the sun had already gone down as Naruto picked Tsunade up. "Come on everyone, I don't know about you all, but I'm going to hit the sack," he said as they started to yawn as they walked back to the inside of their home, missing the pair of silver yellow eyes watching them from the roof a couple of streets away before they vanished with a smirk. I can see he's going to be a perfect husband. Oh yes, perfect indeed. I just hope my girls don't take to him in a wrong way," was her thought before vanishing. It's been a few months since Naruto and the gang arrived to the new world and adapting to the change in environment, and learned that learning a new language was rather easy, with the knowledge of them all being dyslexic after a few words, reading a few words they already knew seeming to appear to be written backwards. Although not all things were bad, in fact they were quite peaceful with the fact that they didn't have to deal with power-hungry and condescending villagers 24/7 or constantly do suicide missions. They also met anew the target they were looking for, whose name was Perseus Jackson, although her prefer the nickname Percy, and they get along together just nicely. They were a perfect group since they were all impulsive, and all save for Hinata and Shizune were against being in school for various reasons. For Percy's reason, he would say weird events would happen to him and would result in not a lot of people liking him. For Naruto and the others it was because they had to learn everything again, and it was just as tortuous as the academy in their old world, or they just didn't give a rat's ass and had clones go for them. After they had met Percy, they then met a young man named Grover Underwood, who to Naruto and the others had a unique scent similar to a goat, telling them he wasn't by any means normal. He was crippled, if what the crutches were any indication of, and was a bit of an earth lover if they were honest, since he hardly ever ate meat, and with his hippie attire. All in all, Grover was a nice guy to hang out with, especially since he tried to look out for himself and Percy despite his weakness. But now the group of 7 was on a bus with the other Yancey kids to the Metropolitan Museum of Art for a field trip. They were going for a lesson on Greek mythology, not that Naruto and the others needed it, since before they applied to Yancey they studied everything involving Greek history and mythology. "I'm going to kill her," Percy said under his breath, wearing a pair of black Converse and blue jeans with a orangish shirt that Naruto admitted was a badass shirt as it was one of his favorite colors. Grover, sitting next to him, wore a yellow shirt and a pair of oversized jeans hiding his sneakers, while Naruto and the others wore the same clothes they got when they first arrived. They were getting annoyed at the moment because Nancy Bobovit was busy throwing wads of her sloppily made peanut butter and jelly sandwich at Grover, who was pretending nothing was happening for their sake, because if Percy does something he'd be expelled. Same would apply should he do something stupid. He was on probation for the crazy things that happen around him. Naruto and the others on the other hand were capable of doing things without getting caught, like their candy, soda and test answer store they run in the school, which makes them quite a bit of scratch. It's alright Percy, I like peanut butter, Grover said with the others sighing as the scruffy boy dodged another piece of her lunch. Naruto sighed as he fiddled with a paper shuriken that he sharpened with a bit of his wind chakra, making it just dangerous enough to hurt, but looks like all it would do is give a person a wicked paper cut. Looking at Percy about to get up before Grover pulled him down before the angered boy saw his friend fiddling with the shuriken. Stay down Percy, you're already on probation, if you do something else you'll get suspended, Grover said before he saw Naruto look at them. That is only if I'm the one who does something, he said slyly as Grover was about to warn Naruto until Bobofit threw another piece. His paper projectile flew, striking the offending scrap of lunch until it hit the window near her, getting stuck through the glass slightly. Bo, would you be so kind as to stop, Naruto said with an annoyed expression, making her wary, unaware of the force staring at her from the seat behind her. Why the hell do you care, Uzumaki? I don't even understand why you and the others hang out with these two losers, she said before she felt a tapping on her shoulder making her turn. The reason we hang out with them is because they're cool guys and better people than you. Now please stop or the next shuriken will be in you and not the window, Anko said with a grin as she pointed to her window as the bully paled, seeing the paper stick outside before nodding. See, I told you she was smart, Tsunade, you owe me $20. Anko said, getting a glare in return before she fished in her pocket, grabbing her wallet and gave her a 20 as they all laughed. Inside the museum in the Greece exhibit. Led the museum tour. He led the group in a motorized wheelchair as they made it through the big galley, past marble statues and glass cases filled with old black and orange pottery. Naruto himself couldn't help but chuckle seeing as the pottery and his old orange and black jumpsuit had the same color scheme. As they walked through, Naruto and the others couldn't help but chuckle seeing Percy being blown away by the fact everything looked to be practically new or were found in a good condition. Anko, not one to pass up a tease, said, your mouth's open, pretty boy, might want to close it before you inhale some dust. Shaking his head he said, sorry but I can't believe how old some of this stuff is. Tsunade said, walking past a pot that had a dog with 3 heads. Well, when there are fanatics looking for stuff like this, they're bound to get it back in a good condition. Percy, looking at the others, said, yeah, and aren't you all some of those fanatics? I mean, Grover and I rarely find you without a book on Greek mythology. They shrugged as Shizune said, there are some pretty interesting things in the book. As they stopped a little ways away from where Mr. Brunner is, she finished, well, besides Mr. Brunner wants us all to know something, Percy. The boy just rolled his eyes, saying, easy for you guys to say this interests you all. I mean, you all excel in practically everything the school has while I'm mediocre. Hey touche, my water-loving friend, Naruto said, taking a jab at the fact Percy has a love for water and seemed to practically be able to breathe underwater at the school pool. Percy tries his best in school, but with his dyslexia and ADHD he had a hard time concentrating in school, so he did a mediocre job because the subjects didn't interest him. He got such decent grades mainly because he got help from his friends. As they turned their attention to the teacher, they all went quiet as he talked about the ancient gods and things of curious natures like what they represented. As he continued, he had them gather around a 13-foot-tall column with a large sphinx at the top as he told them it was a grave marker, a steal for a girl that was around their age. As Naruto turned his attention to Percy while continuing to listen, Naruto couldn't be more proud to see he was actually paying attention despite the idiots around them making it hard to hear what he was saying. Naruto and Percy both tried getting them to shut up, but for an obscure reason the substitute teacher Mrs. Dodds for their math class gave them the evil eye as if she was out to get them. It bothered Naruto and the others even more as they felt a negative vibe from her. Even her chakra had a foul feeling to it. They felt Grover knew something about this as well, knowing that Mrs. Dodds was a person they would need to be careful of, especially when she first showed up. Percy told them he thought she wasn't human. Grover had a look that instantly told those who could read people that he already knew. As Mr. Brunner continued to talk about the funeral art, Nancy blabbed about a naked man on the stele. When she did that, Percy practically snapped at her to shut up. Mr. Brunner said, Mr. Jackson, did you have a comment you wish to share with us? No sir, Percy said, embarrassed for his outburst, making him and the others shake their heads. Granted, Naruto was about to say the same to the redhead, but his friend beat him to the punch. Nodding, Brunner brought the kids' attention to the stele, pointing to the picture, asking, Tell me Percy, do you know what this means? Looking, the boy said, that's Kronos eating his kids, right? He nodded, not satisfied with the answer, saying, yes, that's right, and can you tell me why this is? Seeing his friend struggle, Naruto spoke up saying, Kronos ate his kids because he was given a prophecy that his children were going to overthrow him like he did. The boy's struggling friend sighed in relief as Naruto continued, Kronos was the Titan Lord at the time and got so paranoid thinking that if he let them live they would take the throne like he had done, and so one day he chose to eat them, causing the prophecy to be set in motion because his wife Rhea chose to hid Zeus and as his proxy gave Kronos a rock to eat. Talk about a rockhead, am I right? The joke got a bit of a laugh from everyone, even Brunner, as Naruto said, anyways, some years later as Zeus matured and grew stronger, he tricked Kronos into regurgitating his kids thanks to a poison he got from Gaia, i.e. Mother Earth, setting them free, and brought about the war between the Titans and the gods, with the gods coming out the winner as they sliced Kronos into pieces with his own scythe and tossed him somewhere in the underworld, right? Ew. Many of the girls chorused, making Naruto and the others groan under their breath at the regurgitating comment. Behind the two, Nancy said to her friend quietly, like we're ever going to use this in life, like on a job application. Please explain why Kronos ate his kids. Hearing her clearly, Brunner said, and why Mr. Uzumaki, Mr. Jackson, to paraphrase Mrs. Bobofit's excellent question, would this matter in real life? He busted. Anko and Grover said, chuckling, getting a hiss from the redhead. I don't know, sir, Percy said, getting a sigh from the teacher as he turned to one of his few bright students. Well, a typical answer would be if we would go to Greece it would hold relevance, Naruto said, getting a disappointed look from the teacher. Before Brunner could dismiss him, Naruto finished. But if I had to say anything, I guess history tends to repeat itself in interesting ways. There has never been any knowledge that the gods or even the Titans have ever died. For all we know, they could still be around, and if that's the case, it's important to know what we could do in such a situation, like many of the heroes did fighting the monsters from the stories. Should they still be around, of course. Naruto could feel from the expression Grover and Mr. Brunner had that he said something that alerted their attention before they relaxed, as Brunner said, well, very good, full credit to you both. Zeus did indeed feed Kronos a concoction, which in many stories he got it from Gaia, as you said, Naruto, or he made it himself as a mixture of mustard and wine, which made him his other 5 children, who being immortal gods allowed them to grow up inside him undigested in the Titan's stomach. Seeing the look on the kids' faces, he continued, and as you said, Naruto, once that was done he was indeed sliced into pieces with his scythe and scattered in the darkest part of the underworld, Tartarus. But on a side note, it's time for lunch. Mrs. Dodds, could you lead us back? Hearing Mr. Brunner call for Naruto and Percy, they told the others to keep going and save them a place with them as the chair-bound teacher tell them the importance to his question and the connection it has to real life, as he said, what you all learn from me is vitally important, and I expect you to treat it as such, and I will only expect the best from you too and your friends as well. That made the two mad. Well, Percy was mad. Naruto understood because he sensed a similar energy come from him as it did Grover and Mrs. Dodds, except the vibe he got from him was a friendly kind. As they walked, Percy mumbled something about trying harder while Naruto nodded as they left to join their friends. Naruto was the only one to notice that Mr. Brunner gave the steel a long sad look. It was odd, but Naruto thought maybe he knew her a long time ago. Stranger things have happened as far as Naruto was concerned. Outside, the class gathered on the front steps of the museum where they could get a view of the foot traffic along 5th Avenue. The boys noticed the storm clouds were brewing as Percy asked, "Dude, what do you think is going on with the weather and all?" Naruto just gave him a dull look before saying, Percy, I am by no means a meteorologist or a weather balloon for that matter, so I wouldn't know. But they have been like this for a while, you see it all over the news. But the crazy thing is nobody seems to notice but you, me, Grover and the girls. So Foxy, you two get detention? Anko asked, getting a negative from the two as they joined them at the water fountain a ways away from the others. Nah, not from Brunner, I just wish he'd get off my back. I mean, I'm not a genius, Percy said, getting a snort from Anko, whom he shot a glare at her, who giggled in return. Naruto shrugged, saying, maybe he knows something about us. Hey, maybe we're related to the Greek gods some way that would be crazy if you think about it. Naruto and the others didn't laugh at his joke knowing it was true, but allowed Percy to laugh, getting out of his funk, while Grover gave a nervous chuckle. As they quieted down after Grover asked Percy for his apple after pulling him from this thoughts, as Naruto said, thinking about your mom, dude? He nodded with a sigh saying, "Yeah, we're pretty close to her place. I just hope she's doing okay. I mean, she has been living with Gabe for a while." They understood why he was saying this because Gabe was the epitome of sleaze and an abusive bastard at that. When Anko said, "Oh come on Perk, I'm sure your old lady is fine. Anyone has to be if she has been with that piece of dirt for as long as she has, although why she stays with him is the eternal question. I mean, your mom is, and I'm not trying to sound weird, but your mom is hot, like way hotter than anyone Gabe could land without there being some reason behind it." Percy nodded, slightly disturbed by the fact that his friend thought his mom was attractive, unwrapping his sandwich while Naruto took a bite of his when Nancy Bobofit and her friends came over, dumping her lunch all over Grover, making Naruto and the others shoot a wicked glare at her. "Oops," she said with a drawl while smirking at Percy daring him to do something, feeling sure of herself since Naruto didn't have anything to use on her, adding to her confidence. Naruto and the others could feel Percy was pissed as his chakras surged while trying to keep his temper down, failing miserably. When something weird happened to everyone's shock, the water from the fountain rose up and pushed her on her butt, which Naruto and the others saw. Nancy on the other hand didn't see that as she said, "Percy and Naruto pushed me." Coming up to them with a hard glare around them, the students whispered amongst each other, seeing what happened or what they believed to have happened. After Mrs. Dodds made sure Nancy was fine, which she was besides the wet clothes, she turned to the two boys with her usual, "Now honey," comment before Percy beat her to the punch, saying they'd clean workbooks for the month. Smacking his forehead, Naruto thought, "Now we're going to have worse to deal with," which it did when she told them to follow her. "Wait, they didn't push her, I did," Grover said, making them all turn to the paraplegic boy, not expecting him to take the fall, which Naruto and the others thought were rather noble. Mrs. Dodds shook her head as she said, "I don't think so, Mr. Underwood." He was about to say something until she shot him a glare, making him sit back down, leading them away, while Naruto and Percy shot Nancy a glare as Naruto slowly slid out a paper shuriken from his pocket, making her pale, making him grin. When the two boys turned to Mrs. Dodds, they were slightly off guard as they saw her stand at the top of the stairs of the museum in such a short amount of time, putting them off guard as she did the "come here" motion. Inside the museum. Walking through the museum, the two boys couldn't help but think that they were going to be forced to buy a shirt for Nancy out of their collective pockets at the cheap gift shop, but as they walked through past the store, the thought was dashed. Leaning in close, Naruto said quietly, "Something doesn't feel right. How far deep in the library does she need to take us?" Looking to his friend, he shrugged, wondering the same thing as they made it into the Greek and Roman gallery, finding the exhibit empty save for some statues and cases covered in plastic tarps. Hearing a growl come from her throat as she stared at a marble picture of the Greek gods before she said suddenly, "You boys have been making trouble for us." Confused and slightly on edge as Percy thought about the candy he would sell while Naruto thought about the underground multi-purpose store he and the others ran for a profit, well? Naruto shrugged as he said, "I honestly haven't the slightest idea what you're talking about." Agreeing as fast as possible as the crone cut Percy off from what he was going to say, hissing ominously, "Your time is up." Naruto didn't know if this was some fevered dream from the out-of-date ramen he had stashed or what, but he and Percy couldn't get something out of their minds as Mrs. Dodd's eyes turned glowed like barbecue coals as her fingers stretched into talons while her jacket melted into a pair of large leathery wings with a pair of yellow fangs, making Naruto know she was by no means human now, or if she ever were. "You seeing this too?" Naruto asked rhetorically, getting a paralyzed nod as Percy was frozen in fear. "Good, I was afraid I was slowly going insane," Naruto said as Mr. Brunner came in from the entrance of the museum reading a book with pen in hand. "What ho, Percy!" he yelled, making the boy catch the pen while Naruto pushed him out of the way before rolling under a clawed strike, unsealing his sword as he quickly turned to Percy, staring at his pen that changed into a golden sword. "Percy, watch out!" Naruto yelled, appearing in front of him with a black flash blocking the strike that was bound to cut Percy's head from his shoulders, which shook the boy up quite a bit since he's never fought like this before or ever. Acting on impulse, when the creature formerly known as Mrs. Dodds came at them, Percy and Naruto thrust their swords at her torso, causing her to burst in a shower of yellow powder as if she vaporized from where she was, with nothing but sulfur and a horrifying screech that ran a chill up their spine. Acting quick, Naruto sealed his sword again while Percy was in a daze, leaving them in the empty gallery as Percy looked to the gold ballpoint pen in his possession. Looking at his friend, who pretended to have a confused expression, said, "Dude, you alright?" Naruto raised an eyebrow saying, No, I'm bored, we've been walking in here for a few minutes, come on, I want to get back to my lunch before Grover eats it all. Dude, you didn't see that? Percy said, following Naruto out of the museum, getting a negative. I don't know what you're talking about, man, I think it's just those late night snack attacks getting to you. I guess I'm going to have to keep an eye on you, huh? Naruto said with a grin as Percy noticed Mr. Brunner, who through said pen is nowhere to be seen. Outside the museum. Back outside the museum, the rain had started to fall as they saw Grover use a museum map as an umbrella while the others carried an umbrella, while Nancy was still wet from before. She looked at them and smirked, saying, I hope Mrs. Kerr whipped your butts. Who's Mrs. Kerr? I mean, I know you aren't the brightest, but our substitute math teacher was Mrs. Dodds. Percy said cluelessly while Nancy walked off. They asked the same question to Grover and the others, who Naruto motioned for them to lie. Not funny, guys, this is serious. What happened to Mrs. Dodds? You know, the old crone who'd say, now honey, when we or anyone got in trouble, he said, with the only reply being the booming thunder overhead. Naruto shook his head, leading Percy to Mr. Brunner, who was under a red umbrella reading his book as if he never moved. As he looked up distracted, he said, seeing the pen in Percy's hand, ah, my pen, thank you for returning this, Percy, but next time do remember to bring your own writing utensils in the future. Giving him the pen, he said, sir, what happened to Mrs. Dodds? He looked at the boy, then to Naruto with curiosity as he said, I'm sorry, who? He believes before Mrs. Kerr we had another sub on this trip named Mrs. Dodds. I think he's just exhausted, to be honest, Naruto said, getting a disbelieving look from Percy. Brunner sighed, saying with a hand on the boy's shoulder, Percy, I think your friend is correct. There is no Mrs. Dodds on this trip, and I believe there never has been. Maybe you should sleep earlier tonight and get some rest. He nodded before the two walked back down the stairs with concern as Naruto heard Percy say, confused, as they all made their way to the bus, what the hell just happened? It's been a little over 3 weeks since the Mrs. Dodds incident, and for Percy, he felt like God enjoyed making him look the fool. He asked all around school who had Mrs. Dodds, but they would all look at him as if he were insane, as she never existed, while the person who took her place was a Mrs. Kerr since winter break. The only person who he had the slightest inclination was aware of Mrs. Dodds was Grover, since he was a horrible liar. Whenever he lies, he would stutter, his brow would get sweaty, and tries to avoid eye contact. This is why he believed he was lying about Mrs. Dodds, but Naruto and the others would come and take Percy's focus off the conversation every time. Regardless, the school year was close to reaching its end and everyone were preparing for the finals. Like usual, Naruto and the others remained at the top of the class with A's and B's despite their dyslexia, while Percy was maintaining his D and F average. Naruto in the girls' dorm room. I just don't get it. It's like it's going in one ear and out the other. Nothing about this begins to make sense, Percy said, tossing his book at the wall in Naruto and the girls' dorm room, the only entire co-ed dorm in the school, making the group stare at him. Percy, it isn't that difficult, we have dyslexia, everything is going to be harder for us than others, Naruto said, getting a grunt from the unknowing god. This coming from the guy who has been acing this class since school started, he said, getting a shrug from the others. True, but it's because we study the books every night and during any free time we have to study more, he said, while Percy rolled his eyes as he grabbed his book from the floor. How in the world do I remember the difference between Chiron and Karen? I don't get the difference, Percy said when Anko chuckled with a Twizzler between her teeth. Maybe because one has an I and the other has an A? Anko said rhetorically before Shizune lightly smacked her on the back of the head with her book. You know what I'm talking about, he said, getting a nod from the others. Well, alright, how about we look at it this way, Percy? Karen with an A is the son of the primordial goddess Nyx and Erebus. He is the ferryman to the underworld. Chiron with an I is the centaur who trains heroes, Tsunade explained, getting a nod from Percy, who paused before he dropped his head. Why don't you try and ask Mr. Brunner for help? I'm sure he's still in his office and you're one of his favorite students, he'd more than likely keep his door open for you, Shizune said, getting a nod from the others. Alright. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, he said, getting up and leaving the room while Naruto put his book down, scratching his head with a yawn. After he no longer heard Percy's footsteps, he said, so what do you guys think is going to happen once we get out of school? I mean, the Mrs. Dodds incident has left him suspicious and asking questions. It doesn't help that every time he asks Grover about her he becomes a jittery mess. The kid isn't a good liar, Anko said, getting a nod from the girls. Well, the kid, if he is one mind, you can tend to be afraid of his own shadow at times. I guess we'll just have to play this by ear, but in the meantime we can't have Percy leave our sights in case another monster shows up, Naruto said, getting a nod from the others. Maybe it was better to not have him go on his own then, Hinata said, making Naruto nod. Yeah, but come on, I have doubts that the monsters would be crazy enough to attack on school grounds. Especially since we've flared our chakra around the school so much, any monsters that come by have second thoughts of coming near him, he said as he stretched with his hands above his head. Yeah, but I still can't help but worry, especially since that conversation we caught Grover having with Brunner. If things get any worse, we'll have to be careful, Hinata said, with the others agreeing. After that was said, Percy came in, slamming the door shut as everyone turned to him, while Anko said, "Percy, what the hell is wrong with you? You look like you've just seen a ghost. When I went to talk to Mr. Brunner, I heard him talk to Grover in his office about me," he said, making the group of 5 raise an eyebrow. Talking about you? How are they talking about you? Naruto asked, getting a shake of the head. I only heard bits and pieces from how far I was. I heard my name and then something about being alone for the summer and unkindly ones. They even brought you guys up saying you're unusual and something about the summer solstice deadline, Percy said, making the group raise an eyebrow. Yeah, well, let's not worry about that now. You need to get some rest for your test, otherwise Gabe is going to ride your ass about it. Not that the lard ass doesn't already, for no reason, Naruto said as they got a nod from Percy. Come on, let's get some sleep, Naruto said as Percy left for his dorm. Naruto locked the door when he and the others changed into their sleep clothes. Shizune wore an oversized shirt and boys' shorts, Hinata wore a tank top and her underwear, Anko slept with a pair of shorts and a bra, Tsunade slept in the same thing as Shizune, while Naruto slept in a pair of sweatpants and a muscle shirt. Hey Naruto, Shizune has something to tell you after school, let's out, Tsunade said in her bunk as he turned to Shizune, who was blushing when she quickly nodded before turning away. Alright Shizune-chan, you can tell me when you're ready, no need to rush, he said as he laid back in his bed before they all went to sleep. The next morning, man, Percy is looking a bit swamped with this exam. Think we should give him a hand? Naruto asked the others through a communication seal as he finished the last question on his paper before flipping it over. I don't know, Naruto-kun. Percy-kun studied hard, so he should at least do slightly better to raise his grade to a low C, Hinata answered, getting a series of agreements from the others as they all got up to hand in their papers. Waiting outside the classroom door for Percy and Grover, they heard Mr. Brunner say as all the other kids left, "Percy, don't be discouraged about leaving Yancy. It's for the best." Hearing this, the others grew confused but decided to continue listening before hearing Percy mumble dejectedly, "Okay, sir." Hearing the disappointment in Percy's voice, Brunner said, "What I mean, Percy, is that you're not normal and there's nothing to be." "Oh, thanks for reminding me, sir," he said bitterly, grabbing his bag and walked out. He could have handled that with a bit more finesse, especially with him being his favorite student, Shizune said, getting a nod from the others. "Perhaps I was a bit too hard on him," Brunner said, getting a shrug from the others. "You just wanted him to do his best. I can't imagine what teacher doesn't want that for the students under his guidance," Naruto said, getting a look of appreciation from Brunner. "What about the 5 of you? Are you 5 going to be here next year?" he asked, getting a negative from the 5. "Nah, if Percy won't be here, then maybe it would be best to keep him company at whatever new school he goes to. It's difficult for a new kid to fit in. It would be even harder with him being dyslexic. With us around, it will be easier for him," Tsunade said, getting a nod from Brunner. "You're all good friends. I'm glad he has people like you to look out for him," Brunner said, getting a shrug from them. "We're one of a kind. If there were more of us, there wouldn't be much fun in it all," Anko said, getting a chuckle as they left the classroom, saying goodbye to their teacher. Bus terminal. "Ah, buck up, Perk, it isn't the end of the world. Besides, look on the bright side," Anko said, sitting behind the depressed boy as they were being stared at by 2 young girls. The first looked around 8 years old with mousy brown hair and warm eyes, wearing a pair of brown pants with a red shirt. The other looked slightly older by 2 years with auburn hair and silver yellow eyes, wearing black cargo shorts with a silver lining and a gray short-sleeved shirt with a black long-sleeved shirt on underneath. "Yeah, and what would that be?" he said sarcastically, with Naruto raising an eyebrow at the 2 kids before turning to Grover. "You know, Grover, you seem a bit jumpy. Did you dip into the coffee this morning? You know what that stuff does to you," Naruto said, getting a groan from Grover, who looked like he was anticipating something. About to speak, Percy cut him off saying, "On the lookout for unkindly ones?" Hearing that the two girls focused on them completely as Grover stared at Percy looking like he might have a heart attack, he asked, What do you mean, Percy? I don't know what you're talking about. I overheard you talking to Mr. Brunner about me, Naruto and the others saying something about unkindly ones and the summer solstice," he said, making Grover's ears turn pink. "Oh, that I was just talking to Mr. Brunner about how stressed you are, Percy. I mean, since the field trip you keep bringing up this Mrs. Dodds who never existed," Grover responded, getting a sigh from Tsunade. "Grover, you know you're a horrible liar. We can tell you're lying because when you do your ears turn pink," she said, getting a groan from the kid as he pulled out a couple of business cards for each of them. It was in a fancy script which was difficult for Percy to read, but it was easy for the others to understand as it read. Grover Underwood, Keeper, Half-Blood Hill, Long Island, New York, 8909. Since when did you have a job? You work for the Queen of England or something, Mr. Fancy? Anko asked, getting a sarcastic chuckle from Grover. Percy, staring at the business card, said, "What exactly are you trying to protect us from?" Before the boy could answer, the bus gave a huge screeching halt as black smoke poured from the dashboard as the bus began to smell like rotten eggs. As the driver told everyone to get out, all of the passengers took to the side of a country road as he and the others sat on the grass. "Hey Percy, it seems you have a couple secret admirers," Naruto said, making their friend look from the bus to the stand set up on the other side of the street to see three old women staring at him wearing sundresses as the three knit together one large sock. "Please tell me they're not looking at you, Percy," Grover said, getting a nod from the boy as Grover gained a look of fear on his face. "Think those socks would fit me?" he asked, getting a snort from Anko, who nudged him in the side. "Percy, those socks wouldn't fit Bigfoot's mother," she said, getting a nod from the boy. "Come on, we're going back on the bus," he said, grabbing Percy, dragging him to the bus when Naruto looked towards the others, who shrugged, getting on after them. "Naruto-kun, there are two young girls that has been watching you since we got on the bus. They have a high chakra reserve as large as yours, maybe more," Hinata said as she took a side glance to see the two sitting on the seat next to them. "Yeah, I noticed, and the girl with auburn hair has the same feel to it like when we first came here. I remember when we were on the roof of our place," he said when the bus sputtered, coming to life. Naruto, do you think a couple of old ladies can just vanish?" Naruto heard Shizune ask, making him and the others turn to look out the window to see the three elderly women were gone. No, I don't think they can. What about you, Grover, do you know?" Naruto asked, getting a negative as to make sure the three women were just ducking under it. They never returned as the bus continued to its destination, all the while Grover was muttering to himself about failing again. "Guys, please, you have to be careful, alright? I can't protect you guys when you ask so many questions," Grover said, making the others turn to each other and then to him. "Grover, what are you going on about, man?" Tsunade asked, confused, as it was normally then who protected him. "What do you mean protect us? We're the ones usually protecting you," Anko said as the others nodded in agreement. "At least let me walk you home from the bus station, alright? You guys live near him, don't you?" Grover said, looking towards Naruto's group, who nodded. "Please let me just walk you guys to your houses," he asked again, practically begging before they relented as he nodded gratefully before the ride grew quiet as they reached the terminal. "I'm going to go to the bathroom, I'll be right back," Grover said as he made his way to the bathroom. "I gotta go home and Grover's freaking me out," he said, gaining their attention. "Dude, not cool, we can't just leave him for several reasons. You know these streets as well as we do. We leave Grover here and he'll be swarmed by muggers faster than he can say veggie burrito. 2. He's seriously tweaked, imagine how worse he's going to get if we just vanish on him," Naruto said, standing at the exit with the others, getting a nod while Percy nodded guiltily. "I agree, but I have to see my mom. All this crazy stuff with Mrs. Dodds which you all claim never existed. Then the three old ladies, I just want a single moment of normalcy and see my mom," Percy said, desperately, making Naruto scratch the back of his head. About to speak, he felt something pat his leg when he turned and looked down to see the same two girls Hinata told him about as the auburn-haired girl said, "Excuse me, mister, could you help us?" Kneeling so he was eye to eye with the two as he said as he gained a kind smile, "Sure, what do you need?" "My sister and I were visiting our dad and we were supposed to meet Mom here. Mom was supposed to be here when we got here, but she isn't here yet and we can't be alone. Can you stay with us until she gets here?" she asked, making Naruto turn to his friends. "Well, this solves our solution. You guys go ahead and I'll stay here with them until their mom gets here and Grover and I can meet up with you guys at Percy's. It's easy, Naruto said, getting a nod from the group. So what can you tell me about your mom so I know who to keep an eye out for, and maybe tell me about yourselves? Naruto asked with a calm smile when the two looked at each other. My name is Artemis. I like looking at the stars, listening to music, and I enjoy nature, she said, getting a nod before he turned to the mousy brunette. And my name is Hestia. I like my family and being around my sisters the most. What's your name? She said, getting a smile from Naruto. Well, my name is Naruto and it's nice to meet you both. You know, I remember reading something in Greek mythology about Artemis and Hestia being two Olympian goddesses, Naruto said, getting a nod from the two. Mom named us after them since she's a huge fan of Greek mythology. What do you like, Naruto? Hestia answered, getting another smile from Naruto. Well, I like my friends, the people close to me. I like to play music, and another thing I enjoy is nature. I have a few dislikes, but there are too many to mention and I'd rather not bore you, he said. Maybe if we see each other again you can play for us sometime? Hestia asked, getting a nod from him. When they heard Hestia and Artemis's names being called, they turned to see a woman with bronze-colored hair and light brown eyes wearing a golden yellow dress shirt, black slacks with a matching black office jacket on top left open. Altogether she was beautiful and struck him more as a model than an office worker. On her wrists were gold bracelets and rings with a gold necklace around her neck with a lotus flower on it as she said, "Sorry I'm late, Hestia, Artemis." "It's okay, Mom, this man was nice enough to watch out for us until you got here," Artemis said as their mother stared at Naruto. "I do apologize for inconveniencing you, young man. What's your name?" she asked, taking his hand, getting a chuckle from Naruto. "My name is Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and it's fine. I have a friend who's in the bathroom and we have a few more friends going to his parents' house, so it's no problem at all," Naruto said with a wave of his hand. "Well, Naruto Uzumaki, I still have to show my appreciation for looking after my daughters. How about I give you and your friend a ride to your other friends as a show of appreciation?" she asked, getting a negative. "It's fine, ma'am, you must have a lot to do and I'd honestly hate to inconvenience you just so you can take me and my friend to the others, but I do appreciate the offer," Naruto said, getting a nod from the woman. "Well then, maybe next time. Come, Artemis, Hestia, it's time to go home," she said, leading her daughters away while the two young girls waved goodbye, which Naruto returned. "Where's Percy and the others?" Grover said, coming out of the bathroom, getting a chuckle from Naruto. Percy was getting a little impatient and wanted to go home, and those two kids on the bus asked if I could watch them until their mom came to pick them up. "I told the others to head on down to Percy's and we'd meet them there," Naruto said, putting a hand on Grover's shoulder. "How are we going to get to them though? There's no taxi going up or down the street," Grover said, getting a chuckle from Naruto. "Why, I'm going to use magic," Naruto said, getting a confused look from Grover. "Magic? I'm not 5. How are we?" he said before the two vanished in a flash of red and yellow light. "Jackson residence. Going to get there," Grover said as they appeared in front of Percy's place when the taxi drove by as Percy and the others got out as Percy gained a shocked expression when he saw them. How did you beat us here? We had a good 10 minutes on you," Percy asked, shocked, getting a chuckle from Naruto. "Oh, we took a shortcut, shaved quite a bit of time off the commute, no need to worry. Come on, let's head inside," Naruto said, getting a nod from Percy, who went upstairs first. "Don't talk about what you just saw, Mr. Sator, and we'll be fine," Naruto said, making Grover's eyes widen as Naruto and the others walked up the stairs of the apartment complex. Naruto and the others had been there a number of times, with the most notable being Christmas, as they spent time with Percy, Sally, and to their misfortune, Gabe. Sally was very welcoming to the others, and despite not needing to even got them a gift, granted it was gift cards or books, but it was the fact she made them feel included is what matters. Whenever she would write Percy, she'd ask the others if they were in need of anything, and she would even send them large bags of candy, which they were always grateful for. She and Percy had this blue food running gig. From what they told him, it was mainly just to piss of Gabe's something they enjoyed the most. Whenever she would send bags for them, she'd include a large amount of their favorite colors. As they walked up the stairs with luggage on hand behind them. As they reached the floor where Percy lives, Percy pulled out the keys and opened the door to a disgusting sight. In the room was Gabe, and he looked like he gained an additional ton of weight since the last time they saw him, with his thin receding hair and bulging stomach busting out of his greasy, dirty shirt. Anko whispered to Percy about him looking like a tuskless walrus, making him fight off a laugh. In the living room, Gabe sat with his buddies playing poker while the TV blared ESPN, which neither of the four were watching. They remembered Gabe going on about how nobody could beat him, so Tsunade took him on. She went on to win every game and made over $400. Of course he was pissed that he lost and claimed she cheated, but the others just told him he was being a sore loser. Of course Tsunade was taught by Naruto about how to better her gambling skills along with the others to bankrupt every casino in Vegas. Chips, empty beer cans and pretzel pieces were spread out across the floor, making it apparent that the place hadn't been clean for a good while, or that Sally did clean but Gabe just messes it up not long after, which was a nightmare for Sally seeing as she's a clean freak. Hearing them walk in, Gabe looked up from his cards and scowled as he said, returning to his cards, "So you're back and you brought your punk-ass friends with you too." Tsunade, who had a strong glare, said, "Oh Gabe, it's wonderful to see you again. I hope you still aren't too sore about me cleaning you and your friends out last time I played." "Shut it, you little brat, you got lucky," he said, getting a snort from Naruto. "And you don't look like a tuskless walrus. What's the matter, still can't get out to sea? Oh you poor beached mammal you," Naruto cooed, making the fat man turn red as he got up with his fists balled. "Oh do please try something, I still see that shiner I gave you last time hasn't left yet. How about I give you another and make it a matching set?" Naruto said as he cracked his fingers, narrowing his eyes, making the obese man glare harder. "Is my mom home yet?" Percy asked in an attempt to defuse the situation. He knew that either Naruto, Anko, Tsunade, Hinata or Shizune could easily kick Gabe's and his friends' asses all the way to San Francisco and back, but he'd rather not have to explain to his mom on why the paramedics were leaving the apartment with Gabe and his friends in a stretcher. Gabe's friends were giving Naruto the stink eye, seeing as they didn't like him much and hoping that he didn't participate in their game. Gabe, returning to his seat, said, "She's still working, you got any cash?" Wow, for a grown man to ask a child for money despite having a job? That's rather pathetic. No wonder Sally is the major breadwinner in this house. Of course it would help if you didn't lose every poker game. "I wasn't talking to you, brat. Got any cash?" he said again towards Percy, who shook his head, but Gabe didn't believe him. "You took a taxi from the station, so you probably paid with a 20. You got 6, maybe $7 and change. Somebody expects to live under this roof. He ought to carry his own weight, am I right, Eddie?" he said, getting a snort from Naruto. With how much he weighs, he'll need a lot more than a couple singles, Naruto thought to the others, getting a chuckle from them, drawing Gabe's attention. "What's so funny?" he said, making Naruto step forward and taking a seat in a spare chair, placing a little over $300 on the table. "We paid for the cab fare. If you want to talk about money, you are in the red, so I'm going to make this interesting," he said before turning to the others. "How about you guys head on into Percy's room, help him unpack?" "I'll be there in a bit," Naruto said, getting a nod from the group as they walked into the room while Naruto took everyone's cards and shuffled. Thinking about Percy's mom, it made Naruto a little envious of him, since it's been a little over 7 months and she hadn't been in touch with him since, not so much as a letter to see how he and the others are doing or a video chat after encouraging him to get a laptop a week after they got there. At first he thought that she just felt guilty about leaving him alone, and giving him and the others his apartment complex was her way of apologizing while she continued on with her life as a spur-of-the-moment kind of thing. The girls quickly knocked that thought out of his head. While he dealt the cards, he heard the door open when he heard, "Hello, Naruto." Turning slightly, he said with a pleasant smile, "Hello Sally, it's great to see you again. You're looking as lovely as ever. Did you do something with your hair? It looks wonderful." She gave a blush as she said, "It's great to see you too, Naruto. Is Percy here?" Nodding, he nudged his head towards his room, saying, "Yeah, he's in his room with the others helping him unpack." Giving a nod of thanks, she pulled out 2 large bags of sweets for him with a couple dozen orange candies mixed in, making him give her a look of appreciation while he pulled out a sucker. "Percy's room. You know, I didn't think it was possible, but he's become a bigger ass than before," Shizune said, getting a nod from the others as they cleaned the room that was littered with stale beer and magazines. "Tell me about it. Mom deserves so much better than him," he said, getting a series of nods from the others, as Sally was one of the nicest people you could meet in this world. "Percy?" everyone heard as they turned to see Sally in the doorway when she ran to envelop him in a hug. "Percy, you've grown so much since the last time I saw you and Tsunade, Shizune, Hinata and Anko. It's good to see you all again," she said, hugging them as well as they were all given a couple bags of candy. Come sit and tell me how everything went, Sally said, sitting with them on the bed as they retold her of the events at school, excluding the Mrs. Dodd's deal and the three old ladies on the count of them doubting she'd believe them or have her make a call to send them to the psych ward. Is something wrong? She asked, looking at Percy, who was chalked up. It was easy to see just how much Percy missed her, and it was hard not to. He shook his head, continuing to lie, not wanting her to worry, as she relented while the others knew the conversation was far from over. I have a surprise for you. We're going to the beach, she said, looking at Percy, who had a surprised expression on his face. Montauk? He said, getting a nod from her. That's right, for 3 days in the same cabin, she said, making him smile when she turned to the others. Right when I get change. Do you all want to come with us? She asked, catching them all off guard by her question. Oh, is that really okay? Wouldn't you rather it just be you and Percy so you can catch up? We'd hate to be in the way, Hinata said, getting a negative from her. Not at all, you're more than welcome to come, she said with a kind smile, making them nod. Well, in that case we'd have to stop by our place and get some clothes. We'd also like it if we paid our own way, Tsunade said, getting a nod as they all walked out to tell Naruto. As they were about to tell them, everyone saw that Naruto had them all beat when Gabe said, Sally, I told you to get the bean, didn't you hear me? You got legs, Butterball, you can get it yourself. You could stand to get the exercise, Naruto said, winning the hand, and pulled the winnings towards him, tripling the amount of money he started with, along with a set of car keys and motorcycle keys. Shut it, punk, I worked too damn hard and I don't need some stray coming in my home telling me what to do, Gabe said, getting a chuckle from Naruto. If you call sitting on your oversized ass all day while Sally does the actual work, then I sincerely apologize, Naruto said, grinning at Gabe. I was on my way, honey. We were just talking about the trip, she said, trying to defuse the situation, making Gabe stop for a second. You mean you were serious about that? He said as his pupils got smaller. Yes, I am serious about that, Gabe, and I already made your dip with 7 layers, so it will last you the weekend, so you won't need me to be here, she answered with a glare, showing that she wouldn't budge on the concept of spending time with her son. So long as this comes out of your clothes budget, hurry up with that dip, and the brat apologizes for interrupting my game, he said before Naruto cut him off. Hey Sally, why don't you and Percy go get ready? There's something I need to talk to Gabe about in private. It won't take more than a minute, Naruto said as his eyes glowed lightly with sharp slits where his pupils were. Both Jacksons looked hesitant, especially Sally. She knew Gabe would get physical if he was pushed the wrong way, but Naruto gave the group a look saying he would be fine, making the group nod, leading them away. Come on Mrs. Jackson, Naruto's going to be fine, Anko said as they all made their way out of the room and to the hallway. You got something to say to me, punk? Gabe said, walking around the table, getting in Naruto's face, who had a fox-like smile on his face with his eyes closed. Opening them slightly, he said with a large smile on his face, yes, actually I do. Punching Gabe in the stomach, making the man drop to his knees, holding his stomach in agony, trying to catch his breath when his friends were about to get up. Naruto shot them a glare, making them freeze in their place. Why, you little, he said before he was forced to stare Naruto in the face, seeing his sclera were black while his eyes glowed. Be quiet, Naruto said with a deadly voice while he grabbed Gabe's arm by the elbow, putting it behind his head, gripping it tightly as shoots of pain ran up his arm. Listen and listen to me well, Gabe Ugliano. Sally deserves a hell of a lot better than you by a long shot, and I, for one, along with the others, don't like how you treat her and Percy. I find it disgusting that something like you can be considered a man, as it's a black mark towards all men for you to treat children and women in such a way, Naruto said before stomping on Gabe's ankle, making him try to yell before Naruto had his other hand covering his mouth. Percy may not have noticed it, but I saw the bruise you gave Sally while she has it covered with makeup, and if I could get away with murder, and believe me I know I could, I would kill you. From now on you will give her the respect she deserves, and you will not mistreat either of them again. You're a fucking man, act like a proper one and clean up this fucking mess, because the way you leave this place is downright disgusting at how you can make a woman and child live in such conditions, Naruto said, getting a freighted nod from the terrified man who had a wet spot between his legs along with his friends. This is my only warning, Gabe. If I find a single injury on Sally or Percy, if I so much as hear a single thing that sounds remotely disrespectful aimed towards them, then I assure you that there will be nothing remaining from your pitiful corpse, and if there is anything that should be ingrained in that alcohol-addled mind is this: I always keep my word, Naruto said, letting the man go as Naruto collected everything on the table and left for the room, leaving them to shake in fear. "Hey Naruto, is everything alright?" Sally asked, seeing Naruto wearing his fox-like smile, who nodded. "Just fine Sally, thanks for asking. Oh, and your birthday passed not too recently, didn't it?" he asked, getting a nod as he asked her to hold out her hands. "Happy late birthday," Naruto said, putting the car keys and $900 in her hands, making her eyes widen. What the, Naruto, how did you get this?" she asked, getting a chuckle from Naruto, who opened an eye. "If there's one thing you should know about me, Sally, is that I'm a master at gambling." Gabe was desperate and he offered up his ride as a bargain along with one of his friend's motorcycle. "I know you're tired of taking the bus to work every day, even in the cold, so consider this a gift," he said, making her stare at him as he pulled out the motorcycle keys to see a all-black Yamaha R6 motorcycle parked outside, belonging to the less overweight man in that group of bastards. "It's not orange. Oh well, I can look up books on how to do paint jobs on cars and motorcycles later. Besides, the thing looks like it's seen better days, so I can do some upgrades, make it a beast on the road. Kinda wish I had some chakra metal to add to it," Naruto thought to himself. "What about Gabe, won't he be?" she started when Naruto chuckled. "If Gabe knows what's best, he won't try anything for his safety. Also, I want you to know, if he tries anything, let me know. I mean anything. He hits you, says anything bad about you or Percy, never hesitate to tell me, as I'll be on that fat ball of butter," Naruto said, walking towards the car and put his suitcase in the trunk, as did the others. "We're going to stop by your apartment to get your swim clothes, alright?" Sally said, getting a nod from the others as Naruto put the keys in the motorcycle and subtly cast a genjutsu over himself to make him look older, and started it and followed the others to the apartment. After the group packed their stuff for the trip, Naruto sat in the middle of the Camaro after Grover left when Naruto cast a subtle genjutsu over him, with Anko sitting on his lap sharing headphones as they listened to the music while they all talked leisurely. It was mainly between Percy and his mom, but they figured it was about what had happened over the last couple months. Since their arrival to the elemental nations, Naruto changed, not just physically, which Naruto filled out more holding a swimmer's build, while the girls all had an athletic build, but they had a physique of models. But they were also at peace in this new world, as opposed to the elemental nations where they dealt with harsh words and the ever-growing threat of people trying to kill them when their backs were turned. Naruto changed the most as he matured a great deal and was so much more different than he used to be. If anyone from the elemental nations asked what he did with the real Naruto, he'd answer he grew up and leave the matter at a close. Right now the car was pulling up to a wooden cabin on the beach that was rather large to fit all of them. While it was old, it was still in a good condition. The beach was beautiful with its white sand and clear blue ocean waters that sparkled as the sun hit it. The others could understand why Sally and Percy were in love with the place. It looked like they were the only ones there, since no other cars were pulled up alongside the other cabins. In fact, it looked like it was rarely used, but the look on both Sally and Percy's face showed just how much this beach meant to them. "Alright, why don't you all unpack the car while I go pay and let the others know we're here," Sally said, looking behind them as they nodded. Pulling out the credit card his mother gave them, Naruto handed it to Sally as he said, "Here you go, Sally. We promised we'd pay our way here." Looking at him gratefully, she headed off. The kids unpacked, taking everything out of the car and put it into the cabin. As they took a look inside, it was a pretty basic setup: a couple of cupboard, a decent-sized kitchen, a bathroom, and a couple beds large enough to fit two each. There were a few cobwebs here and there, but everyone figured it was because it wasn't used much. "It isn't much, but I've come to love this place since I was little," Percy said, setting the bags down, looking around the cabin. "I understand why, with the beach outside, with the ocean, a warm campfire outside with marshmallows, it all sounds like a little slice of heaven if there was one," Tsunade said, looking around the cabin while Percy nodded. "Yeah, but for my mom there was always another reason to her liking this place. This is where Mom met my dad," he said, looking out the window to see his mom walking towards the cabin, drawing a surprised look from his friends. "You don't talk about him much, do you?" Shizune said, getting a shrug from him. "I never meet him. Not that I can remember a time where I did meet him. At least, if anything, it's the barest trace of a smile, but aside from that, nothing. From what Mom told me, he was a very rich and powerful person, but he was very kind. Apparently I have his eyes and hair," he said, combing his hand through his hair. "They spent their time here on the beach. When Mom found out she was pregnant with me, he had to leave out on business. He went out to sea, but he never came back," he said, making the group stare at him. "She said he was lost at sea. Not dead, just lost at sea." She doesn't like to talk about him much. It makes her sad," he said, getting a nod, knowing that a loved one is away from you for so long is a painful thought to remember, as they all looked towards Sally, who was still walking towards them, and felt sad for her. She was a wonderful woman who had a lot of bad things happen to her in her life. From what they knew, she was never one to get angry and welcomed Naruto and the others with arms wide open, something he and the others were always thankful for. Looking at her on the beach, she looked happy, like years had been taken off her, making her younger than she was. When Sally walked in, she had everyone unpack and make their way outside to enjoy the cool air. Since it was summer, the sand was hot while the water was as cold as ice. After a bit of swimming, they went back to the beach and played baseball, taking turns at who batted, pitched and played the field. It was a close tie between the trained ninja, making them great athletes all around. Even Percy did well, surprising the others since he never showed an interest in a sport back at Yancy. When the day changed to night with the moon high in the sky, causing the ocean to glitter and gleam like it did during the day. But Naruto found it to be more beautiful at night than opposed to the day. He felt energized like he always did at night. The group sat in front of the cozy campfire, roasting marshmallows on the end of sticks, talking, making idle chat. "Mom, what was Dad like?" Percy asked, gaining a bit of courage as she put down her stick, trying to avoid getting sand on her marshmallow as she looked at Percy with a look on her face that told the others Percy asked this question a number of times in the past. He was kind, Percy. He was tall, handsome and powerful. But he was also very gentle. You have his eyes and hair, she said with a small smile on her face. Pushing for more answers, he asked, "How old was I when he left? I mean." Watching the flames flicker around, she said, "He was only with me for the summer, Percy. It was here on this beach where we spent our time together." "But he knew me as a baby, right?" he asked, getting a shake of the head from his mother. "No, honey. He knew I was expecting you, but he never saw you. He had to leave when you were born," she said as it became slightly more difficult to talk, while Percy felt hurt that his father never met him. As she asked the others about them and their parents, giving similar responses about how either their mother or father died or left when they were born. She looked at Naruto, who was silent, eating his marshmallows, silently looking up at the sky. "What about you, Naruto? You never talk about your parents. What were they like?" she asked, getting everyone's attention, making him look at the fire, while she and Percy were curious about his parentage as it never came up in a conversation. She knew he and the others were orphans, but nothing else, and were careful to ask, knowing it was a sensitive subject for him. "Honestly, I never met either of them in person back where we're from. We lived in a relatively large village in a forest, and people had mixed answers for various reasons due to an event that transpired the night I was born," he said, making Sally and Percy look towards him. "What event was it?" she asked, with Percy curious when Naruto turned his stick over as he drew a large fox with 9 tails. "Where we're from, we believe in a story of the Sage of 6 Paths and an entity known as the 10 Tails. The story says he was gifted with the power of the gods and fought it as he sealed its energy inside him while sealing the creature's body into what we now know as the moon. Before he passed, to make sure the 10 tails never showed up again, he used what strength he had in his decaying age and split it up into 9 creatures with a number of tails ranging from 1 to 9. These are what came to be known as the 9-tailed beasts," Naruto said as Sally was enraptured by the story. Sometime later, the 9-tailed beasts were split between the countries from where we're from to act as guardians as humanity began to fear them as monsters, even going so far to attack them, thinking that they were mindless beasts made of demonic energy. In Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves where the 9 tails resided, my mom gave birth to me when it broke free and attacked the village, killing hundreds of people. He started, drawing the gasps from Sally. When the 9 tails attacked, the leader of the village defended the village and sealed it away, but not before placing a mark on the firstborn child of October 10th. Me being the only child born that day, I was the bearer of that mark, these scar-like marks to be precise, he said, scratching the back of his head. The leader of the village at the time, the 4th Hokage, died sealing it away, and he was dearly loved by the village, and the people were angry, not just the loss of their leader but for the loss of their loved ones as well. They took their anger out on the only source available, and sad to say that was me, as I was seen as a bad omen, or to many the fox put in a human form. People do things that makes you question humanity sometimes. He paused, looking up from the fire as Sally and Percy saw his slitted pupils for the first time. My mom died giving birth to me, and my father died during the attack. People who knew my parents also hated me, blaming me for the death of their friends, families and loved ones, so they did anything they could to hurt me. Kicked me out of the orphanage in the winter, denied service at stores and restaurants. I was even forced to live in a rundown apartment in the red light district," he said, making the two raise an eyebrow at him. The red light district is basically the seedy part of town. Drug dealers, gangs, prostitutes and brothels are. Sometimes I would even get attacked, and if they didn't attack, people would yell things at me like my mother was some gutter whore and my father was some pathetic drunk, or that they killed themselves out of shame for birthing a demon. The number of people who didn't try to hurt me I could count on two hands, and the bulk are right here, along with a ramen stand owner, his daughter and the third leader of the village," he said, making Sally stare at him with wide eyes. "To be honest, I didn't even know who my parents were until recently, because the people in the village felt I should know when they deemed I was mature enough, and with how my life in the village was, it was safe to say they wouldn't have ever let me know," he said, pulling out a photo of his mother and father to show them to Sally and Percy. "They look nice. You look like a mix between both of them," Percy said, getting a chuckle from Naruto while Sally shook her head. "How could deny you the right to know your parents?" she said, getting a chuckle from Naruto. "It was mainly due to who they were. The man who sealed the 9 tails away was my father, and my mother was the heiress of the Uzumaki clan. If I had to guess, it was the village's intent to keep me from knowing, to gain access to everything they left me, but that stopped when we were all brought here one day with a letter from my mom, the same woman I was led to believe was dead, as she got us the entire apartment complex and enrolled us at Yancy with a bank account that held all the money they had," he said as Sally returned the picture, which he put back in his pocket. "The letter said how sorry she was that she had to leave me alone, and that when we get the chance I'd meet her face to face, and how I'd see her soon. That was almost 8 months ago, and I haven't so much as received a letter since the first," he said, scratching the back of his head with the warmer still on his hand, which was slightly frayed due to all the chakra control and jutsu he's been performing. He learned that by using normal techniques of various levels and chakra usage, it frayed at a moderate pace, but when he used senjutsu it went faster, as it once went past his forearm to his upper arm and was now past his elbow. Seeing him have a contemplative look on his face, he got up from his seat and yawned, saying, "I'm going to hit the sack and get some sleep." Watching him walk towards the cabin, Shizune sighed, catching everyone's attention as she said, "Talking about his parents is a sensitive subject for him. It always has since we were kids. Everyone would verbally attack him, with a sore spot being his parents. There were a number of times we had to get Naruto to the hospital for his hands because a few people took their comments too far and had to stop the bleeding." "What happened?" Percy asked, getting a grim look from the girls as they looked to the cabin. "He beat 20 people unconscious until they were in comas. His fists were bloody and showed the bones in his knuckles," Hinata said, making Sally gasp while Percy went wide-eyed. "Naruto? The peaceful, fun-loving, everyone's friend and ultimate prankster Naruto?" It was hard to believe. Yes, he would fight, but only in self-defense, but for him to attack someone first was unheard of for them. He's known for his fast healing. In fact, by the time we got the supplies to help him, his hands were completely healed. You couldn't even see the muscle tissue anymore. He has a few taboos you should know when you're around him. He doesn't stand for the abuse of children and women, rape or traitors. You break those, he'll break you," Anko said, yawning before getting up. "It's getting late. I think it's time we all turned in," Anko said, getting a nod, as all the while Sally's mind raced, thinking they were the same as Percy, before she and Percy retired to the cabin to see Anko sleeping in Naruto's bed with her head on his chest, while the others slept together, leaving Sally and Percy to share a bed before joining them in their sleep. Later that night, hearing a banging on the door, Naruto and the others got up while Naruto walked towards the door, opening it to reveal Grover. "I have been searching for you guys all night. What were you thinking?" he said, panting, drawing a confused look on the others' faces when they noticed him without his crutches before their eyes widened to see his lower half was replaced with goat legs. "A better question, pal. What's with the goat legs?" Anko asked, pointing to the legs where human legs and feet should be. "Later. Right now I gotta get you all out of here," Grover said when a thunderstorm sounded off, making the wind pick up. Sally, having gotten out of bed along with the others, who changed quickly thanks to seals on their person, wore a blue robe covering her pajamas. She looked at Grover before a look of terror formed on her face as she quickly turned on Percy. She said, shouting over the rain and thunder, "Percy, what happened at school? What didn't you tell me?" Cutting Percy off, Grover said, "We don't have time for this. It's still behind me and we had to get out of here." Percy, still too shocked to speak, Naruto and the others filled her in on the Mrs. Dodds event and the three elderly women on the side of the road. If it were possible she would have gotten paler than she was now as she said, "Everyone get in the car." Grover running or more so trotting towards the car as he opened all the doors, letting everyone inside running from the cabin in their pajamas. They hopped into the car, not bothering trying to fit like on the ride to the beach as they drove off. Driving down the country road as the wind slammed into the Camaro while rain lashed at the windshield. The others were curious how Sally could see, but she continued to drive like she was on autopilot. "So Grover, how do you know my mom?" Percy asked, finding his voice as he looked to his friend. "We don't actually know each other, but more so she knew I was over you, all of you," he said as he put focus on all of them. Seeing the raised eyebrow on all of them, he clarified, "I was keeping tabs on all of you, making sure you're all okay. But I wasn't faking being your friend, I am your friend." "So what exactly are you?" "I mean, for as long as we've known you, you always carried those crutches, but now you have a set of goat legs," Percy asked as he pointed to the legs. "Well, I'm a goat from the waist down," Grover said, getting a, "No really?" look from the others. "We've seen weirder, to be honest, so we'll guess you're a satyr then," Anko said, getting a nod from Grover despite the shocked expression on his face. "How do you know?" he asked, getting a chuckle from Shizune despite the situation. "You're talking to the group who reads everything Greece related. Remember, also Naruto's mom told us to study Greek mythology," she said, getting a sheepish chuckle from him. "Can someone explain what's happening? I'm still stuck on the fact that my best friend is a mythological being from Greece," Percy said as everybody suddenly jerked from the sudden turn. "Percy, there's too much to explain and not enough time. We have to get all of you to safety," Sally said, still driving. "From what?" Percy asked. Grover looked behind him out of the rear window to see if whatever was following him still was. "Oh, nothing much, just the Lord of the Dead and a couple of his bloodthirstiest minions is all," Grover said, making the group turn to him like he was crazy. "Care to repeat that?" Hinata said, using her Byakugan to look behind them to see if they were being followed. "Well, more so Percy, since he is in the most danger, but we need to get all of you out of here too," Grover said as the others tried to wrap their minds around this, while Percy failed as he tried to convince himself this was all some dream. Sally made a hard left before the group found themselves driving past a large strawberry farm that had wooden houses that looked darkened with a large sign that read, "Pick your own strawberries." "We're almost there," Percy and the others heard Sally and Grover mutter to themselves while Sally's grip over the wheel tightened. "Where are we going?" Percy asked, with his mind still racing, getting everyone's attention. "The summer camp one told you about," Sally said with her voice tight as Naruto and the others could see her eyes beginning to glisten, struggling not to cry. "The place you said you didn't want me to go to?" Percy asked, making the others groan, knowing this was tearing at her. Sally begging as her grip tightened even more over the wheel until her knuckles bleached white. "Please. This is hard enough, just try to understand that you're in danger." "Why? Because some old ladies cut yarn in front of me," he said, getting a negative from Sally and the others. "Those weren't old ladies, Percy. Those were the Fates. Do you know what it means, the fact that they appeared in front of you?" "They only do that is when you're about to, when someone's about to die," Grover said. "Oh well, this is just wonderful," Naruto and Tsunade said together, rubbing the bridge of their noses while Sally looked at the two as they sat next to her with Tsunade in Naruto's lap. "Are you two okay?" she asked, getting a positive from the two. "Yeah, it's just that when we went to sleep some few hours ago, the last thing we believed to happen was for us to be driving down the road at full throttle with our friend who's actually a satyr that was supposed to be a Greek myth. Although it's not a surprise since with Naruto's luck insanity follows him like the plague," Tsunade said, getting an indignant snort from Naruto. "I know this is difficult, but," Sally started when she made a sharp turn when a large figure appeared next to the car with her barely missing it. "The fuck was that?" Anko exclaimed as nobody corrected her profanity when a blinding flash lit up the area when the car suddenly went boom, causing the car to flip over and land on the ground upside down. "Oh ow," Naruto said, rubbing his head as he had a tight grip on Tsunade, making sure she didn't get hurt further while Naruto felt a bump starting to form. "Oh, that can't be good," Naruto said as he heard Sally ask if everyone was okay while Naruto looked at the roof of the car to see it was charred with blackened edges. "Did we just get fucking hit by lightning?" Naruto asked, with nobody answering while they thought the same except Grover, who was knocked out with blood leaking from the side of his mouth. There was a lot of chakra in that strike. It was immense and controlled. That wasn't accidental, he thought to himself, sensing the residue. Come on, we have to keep going, Sally said as Tsunade punched the door of the car, allowing her to slide out before pulling the others open while getting the others out. Checking on Grover, she told everyone he was just unconscious when they heard a loud stomping sound come from down the road as they looked to see a large figure lumbering towards them, looking as if it had something covering its head with their arms up high in the air like sharp points. Moving towards them, Sally yelled out, "Now! Do you all see that large tree on top of the hill? Head straight for it and don't stop until you get over the hill, and you'll see a big farmhouse down in the valley. Run and don't look back. Yell for help and don't stop until you reach the door," Sally asked as they all began moving, pointing towards the large pine tree towering over the others. "Mom, you're coming with us," Percy yelled, getting a sad look from her that didn't bode well for the trained ninja. "We aren't leaving you to face whatever the hell that thing is," Naruto said as he and the others made their way towards the hill with Grover on Tsunade's back, while Grover groaned about food, making the others roll their eyes, knowing that was all he dreamed about 90% of the time. R-O-O-A-R-R-R-R. The group heard as they looked over their shoulders to see Sally's recently acquired Camaro tossed like a rag doll as he ran after them. With every step was the equivalent of a minor earthquake as it grunted and snorted. As it got closer, they saw what was chasing them was over 7 feet tall, with large meaty hands swinging from side to side. His upper half was furry and fuzzy, while his head was large and bulky while also being covered in fur and fuzz. There was a large gold ring going through its nose, while on its head were 2 large horns reminiscing that which a bull would have. Looking at it, Naruto and the others still couldn't help but think, still not the most bizarre, crazy or frightening thing we've experienced. Seeing this creature, Sally muttered to herself as she said, "We have to go. It's after Percy, but it's possible it's after you all as well. We have to move." "But that looks like," Percy started when Sally told him not to say its name as they have power. "Pasiphae's son, like the story of Theseus and the well, the bullman," Naruto said the alternative for the creature's name, as names hold power. "This can't be real, I mean lumbering bullmen, it's crazy," Percy said as Naruto cast him a side glance. "Percy, if you haven't noticed, forgetting the bullman for a second, Tsunade is carrying our friend who's a satyr with goat legs from the waist down. It's safe to say all this Greek mythology business is real now. I see why Mom wanted me and the others to brush up on Greek mythology," he said as they ran ahead, seeing the pine tree was still too far away. Naruto and the others were doing fine as they weren't even slightly winded, while Sally and Percy were struggling. Meanwhile, the Minotaur was starting to catch up as it was sniffing the air for their scent. "His sight is terrible. Take this time to hurry to the farm. I'll stall as long as I can," Naruto said, drawing a surprised look from the others. "Naruto, don't be crazy. That isn't some kid trying to start a fight. He will kill you," Percy said, getting a chuckle from Naruto. "Oh, don't be such a baby, Percy. Besides, I've got my fair share of secrets. Besides, we have to get through here now, and it's going to be a long way with you two already exhausted. The most I can do right now is slow him down while you all get to the door," Naruto said, not looking back as the two stared at him. "Come on, Naruto knows what he's doing," Anko said as she grabbed Sally and Percy's hands, dragging them away when the large beast roared. "Be careful, Naruto-kun," Shizune said, kissing his cheek, making Naruto smile lightly before the others did the same. "This is me we're talking about here, you know now," Naruto said, closing his eyes as he activated the seal holding his sword as he drew Tensa Zangetsu with an onyx black sheath when he opened his eyes, showing his dujutsu. "Alright, I don't know who the hell sent you. Nor do I know who the hell tossed that fucking lightning, but I can make a wildly accurate assumption. But know this, if there is one person you don't fuck with, and I intend on making sure he learns that as well," Naruto said as his chakra started to press down on everything around him, making the large creature take a hesitant step back before growling as Naruto's eyes glowed, with 2 large figures forming behind him with his eyes. "It's Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," Naruto said, drawing his sword while reaching into his pocket to pull out a seal and put it on the fabric over his arm. "This should allow me at the most 15 minutes of free chakra use, but the backlash will be immense," Naruto thought as his sword was covered in white lightning before it extended, growing to the length of a nodashi, holding it in a reverse grip. Forming a single hand sign, he said, "Futon. Katsu sa reta masudo dangon, boil release. Pressurized mist bullets." Inhaling as the large creature charged forward, he exhaled as several bullets made of an acidic mist spewed from his mouth, hitting the creature, making it roar in pain as the skin of the creature blistered and started to melt while still swinging its fists. When Naruto ducked under the first, he received the backswing, launching him from where he was standing and through 2 trees. Righting himself, he let his feet press into another tree, using his chakra to stick to it as the seal on his arm glowed, making Naruto tisk, knowing he was using a lot of chakra as it was with that jutsu. Better end this quick, this seal won't last for too much longer, Naruto thought to himself as he got off the tree before channeling more white lightning to his sword, making it coat itself with white lightning as it extended to the length of a nodashi again before getting into a stance. Getting into a stance, Naruto closed his eyes and said, Hidden Mitsurugi Ryu. Uzumaki Hijutsu. Kage Ryu no Kogeki, Flying Heaven Govern Sword Style. Uzumaki Secret Art. Shadowless Dragon Attack. Charging forward, Naruto vanished in a flash when 4 images of Naruto appeared around the beast, all in a striking position with their swords giving off a chirping sound, while the original Naruto stood behind the monster, sliding the sword in its sheath. The moment it was fully sheathed, the 4 clones vanished from existence while the Minotaur burst into a shower of gold dust when the sealed tag on his clothed arm burned away, when the fabric burned more off as it was now at half the length of his forearm while the string around it was still intact. Collapsing to his knees, he cut off chakra to his eyes, placed his hands to his ribs, wincing before spitting out a glob of blood as he said, huffing, "This seal is becoming a pain in my ass, but my body isn't ready to use my full power. Not yet, at least everyone's safe." As if despite him, he heard another roar similar to the creature he fought near where Sally and the others were running, making him curse, "Naruto. Sally, she's in trouble, there are more of those things and Percy's unconscious." Wincing at the alarmed yell Hinata gave off, he cursed as he got to his feet, focusing chakra to his feet, thinking, "I'm on my way." Focusing on the spiritual side of his chakra, he vanished in a burst of sound. He thought to himself, "Let's just hope I can make it on time in this condition." With the others grabbing Percy, Anko got him out of the way as Hinata's fists were covered in flaming blue chakra as the veins on the sides of her eyes bulged outward, striking at one of the many Minotaur that appeared all of a sudden, while Shizune and Tsunade pulled out their weapons, killing more of them. "Damn it, with all these damn monsters around we can't reach Sally," Anko said, slicing through 2 Minotaur. "Get out of the way." They heard as the girls jumped back when a volley of arrows as they rained down on the horde as it rained gold dust when Naruto jumped down, landing on his knees, panting. "Foxy," Anko said, running towards him as she helped him stand while he winced. "You alright, Naruto?" Shizune said, getting a weak nod from Naruto as they noticed the fabric on his arm was substantially shorter than it was last time. "I had to use that seal, and that last one got a good hit in breaking a couple of ribs. They're healing, but it's at a rather slow pace compared to my old healing abilities," Naruto said as he stood at full height. "But how are there so many of them? Only one was chasing us, and then after you kept its focus 20 of these things just showed up in a flash of light," Hinata said as Shizune checked him over with her hands glowing green. "Ah," everyone heard as they turned to see Sally in a Minotaur's grip as it squeezes tighter. "Sally," Naruto and the others exclaimed as the Minotaur's grip tightened down further until she vanished in a burst of gold light. Growling, Naruto focused chakra into his hand as it formed a ball of black chakra with a white light in the center as it gained a white 4-bladed shuriken formed on the sphere, while Naruto discharged an excess of black chakra as it flowed off him like a waterfall, with the cloth burning slowly. As the shuriken and the spiraling sphere got larger, several dark gold chains burst from the ground, wrapping around the monsters while a screeching sound filled the air as Naruto tossed it, making the attack explode in a large spinning dome, destroying them completely. "Naruto, are you okay?" Shizune asked, seeing him grip his knees as he struggled to breath while holding him up. "I am fine, although I doubt Percy's going to be thrilled to learn his mom is dead, but I don't think this was some random attack," Naruto said as they slowly made their way to the gate. "We would have let Sally in, but there was some kind of barrier that kept her from entering," Anko said, looking down. "What do you think was behind this?" Hinata asked, getting a shake of the head. "If monsters like those exist, then the gods exist as well. That bolt of lightning that struck the car wasn't some freak accident, it was a controlled blast, and there's only one god of lightning in Greek mythology. If he is responsible for this, I'm making him swallow his teeth with my foot up his ass," Naruto growled as his vision started to fade. "Come on, let's get inside and get help. Percy doesn't look too hot, and the same can be said for Grover. Tsunade said as she put herself under Naruto's other arm while Shizune did the same on his other side as they helped him walk while Hinata carried Percy while Anko had Grover. Taking them further inside the gate as Naruto started to lose consciousness, he heard a series of footsteps and clopping coming towards them. Looking up, he saw made out 4 figures with 3 having slender bodies as they were feminine. One had blonde hair. The other had raven black hair and blue eyes, while the last was lightly taller than the other 2 with stringy brown hair and brown eyes. The one with blonde hair moved towards Percy and Grover, checking them over as Naruto saw the other 2 move towards him, checking him over. He had to admit the 3 were pretty admittedly when he heard the raven-haired girl say before he blacked out, joining Percy and Grover into blissful unconsciousness. "Chiron, this one's got a few broken ribs."